Hi, this is Socks, and this is going to be my first real video on this channel. This will be addressing the engineer and why I feel that his matchup with the Pyro is unbalanced in, Team Fortress 2. I had a multitude of scripts written out for this video, but they all just kind of seemed really pretentious and didn't really make any sense by the end, so this is going to be a bit more of a stream of consciousness type of video. Grab a cup of tea, sit down. I have a couple of talking points here that I want to go through, and if you disagree, if you agree, if you want to say something, absolutely feel free to do so in the comments. Like I said, this video isn't going to be very structured, so please bear with me, and I hope you enjoy. So let me preface by saying that Engineer counters Pyro. That's the way it should be, that's the way it ought to be. Pyro is not meant to be a class that's good at fighting sentries. However, I believe there's a fundamental difference between the way that NG counters Pyro and something like how Pyro counters Spy. When you look at the interaction between a Pyro and a Spy, the Pyro counters the Spy because that's the way his class was kind of set up. However, there are a multitude of ways that the Spy can get around that. For example, trick stabs, or just gunning him down, or playing kind of mind games and getting around him. These are things that the Spy can do that are skill-based and rely on not only the Spy's mechanical skill, but the soft skills that you learn as a player, how to juke out your enemies, how to play mind games, assessing each individual player's strengths and weaknesses. I believe that none of this applies to an encounter with a sentry gun. Let's take a corner stab, for example. Most Spies don't know how to corner stab, at least not efficiently. Good Spies will know that as a Pyro you're going to be preoccupied with not only hunting them down, but with all the things that come with that. For example, you want to make sure that you're not getting shot, and you're definitely going to be watching out for trick stabs. So what most Spies do, or most good Spies that I've fought, is they'll weaken you up a bit, make it seem like they'll take damage on purpose, right? And they'll make it seem like they're going to be running away and that's your time to strike, but no, it's a corner stab. There's skill involved in that, and they were sizing you up the whole fight, and you were trying to size them up, but evidently, you failed because you got corner stabbed. That doesn't apply to sentry guns, because when it comes to sentry guns, they're just, it's numbers. It doesn't matter, your skill is completely fucking irrelevant, and there are a lot of ways of fighting sentry guns that I've seen a lot of people bring up that, in my opinion, just don't work, and I'll address those in a second. So this part involves a little bit of math. Back when Air Blast was added, well, I wasn't around for that, so I can't really say, but I assume back when Air Blast was added, part of the draw of Air Blast was reflecting sentry rockets, because that was supposed to be Pyro's kind of ace in the hole against sentries, which he struggled with, already, and continues to struggle with, but it doesn't really work out that way because of a multitude of factors, and the two main ones are, one, rocket reflex don't do enough damage, and two, you're going to be absorbing a lot of damage while you wait for the rockets to come out. Rockets fire at an interval of, I believe, once every second. I could be wrong about that. I don't know the specifics, but the point is you're going to be taking a lot of bullets while you wait for that. Now, rocket reflex would be worth it if they did more than 100 damage. As it stands, and I did a little test with this, that's nothing. Engineer can heal, I think the max that I got on TR Walkway was 102 damage per swing with his wrench. So rocket reflex doing 100 damage doesn't really cut it, and I guess the main point was to kill the engineer rather than the sentry with them, but that doesn't really work when he's cooped up behind his sentry or across the map with the rescue ranger. They're not as good as some people would lead you to believe, and the fact that they only deal 100 damage leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion. I think that a very small buff that could help with this would be to make them deal 112 damage versus buildings, because the sentry gun has, I believe, 316 HP, and as it stands, you need to... No, I'm sorry, 216. You need to put 3 rocket reflex into a non-tanked sentry gun before it goes down. That's ridiculous. That takes a lot of time, and that takes a lot of health that the engineer could be using to get back to his sentry gun and finish you off, or just start tanking it. And tanking the sentry gun, because of the rate that engineer can heal, and the rate that it fires the rockets at, and the damage the rockets deal, mean that you're never going to kill it. You are never going to kill a tanked sentry gun with rocket reflex. And that is a damn shame, because it turns Pyro from something that could legitimately be threatening to a sentry gun to a dog toy. Basically, there's no threat. You know what I mean? So, so what ends up happening is you round a corner and you come face to face with a sentry gun and you land a rocket reflect and it does 100 damage and you see that and you go, oh shit, that's cool, 100 damage, I did a lot of damage to that sentry gun, and then the NG swings his wrench once and deletes all that damage. The fact that they do a flat 100 is, it makes them completely inconsequential. And I feel like if that was supposed to be Pyro's like ace in the hole against sentries at any point, it failed miserably, and I feel like they honestly could use that buff that I was talking about, but I'm more than willing to discuss that in the comments of this video. And the other thing that I really wanted to touch on was circle strafing sentries, which is a very common tactic, and it actually works out when you can do it. The issue is, a lot of the times that's just not possible, because the entire strat hinges on the engineer just being bad with his sentry placement, bad with his maintenance, and just a shit engie in general. What I mean by that is, if you round a corner and the sentry gun is up against a wall, you cannot circle strafe it. It's impossible, because you can't go in a circle, so the sentry ends up shredding you. So your skill, your strategy, your damage is completely dependent on the engineer just being bad and not putting his sentry in the right place, and he can easily rectify that by just putting it up against a wall. And it gets even worse when it's in a corner, because then you don't even have that 180 degree field of movement. You have like 45 at most. And this combined with the fact that the sentry gun has more health than the pyro, it has way more DPS, it has an absurd amount of knockback, and it has a ready source of healing that has a little like flashing button on its screen saying, hey, heal me. That means that you're basically never going to beat a sentry gun that's, you know, even up against a wall. And that is a crying shame. And again, there's a very, very simple fix in my opinion, which would be to make sentry guns turn slower while they're under direct fire damage. Like the metal's kind of warping. I don't know what the explanation would be, but it would make those situations a lot more manageable, because as it stands, if you get caught in a bad fucking position, you're just fucked. There's no getting out of it, and you have to just run away. Now, a lot of people will say, okay, well, that's where team play comes in, and that's the point of NG countering Pyro, that he can't 1v1 a sentry. And I would say, yeah, but there are situations where that can literally lose you the game. I remember I was in a game of Dust Bowl once, or excuse me, Badwater, and I was the only person on last. I was the only person who could get on the cart, and there was just a sentry in my way. Nobody else. Everyone else was preoccupied or dead, or they were AFKing or whatever. And I go out to push the cart, and I try my fucking hardest to kill this sentry, and it's up against a wall, and I can't do anything about it, and I die and lose the game. And that sucks, because it's just... It acts as, like, a fuck you, stop playing Pyro kind of message. You know what I... Like, it's... Your class just becomes completely obsolete because someone else decided to play another class. And that is not something that I feel adheres to the balancing philosophy of Team Fortress 2 at all. I feel like the pattern of every class being able to overcome, like, unfavorable odds is something that's ingrained in the gameplay, more or less, and that this specific scenario is an egregious outlier, but it gets a pass because it's Engineer. For some reason, I don't know why, but a lot of people seem to just give NG a pass on shit. But that's a topic for a different day. Now, to really illustrate what I'm talking about, I've taken it upon myself to basically make up these 3 principles of fighting Engineer. The first one is damage, which is basic. It's pretty straightforward. It's just you need to be able to do enough damage to take down a building, which isn't hard for most classes. Even classes that NG typically is also categorized as countering, like Scout, can do pretty good chip damage from a far enough distance that they're safe. The second and more important, in my opinion, like factor to fighting NG would be displacement. That's things like stickies and rockets and explosives pretty much, but there's other things that force the engineer to move away physically from his buildings or to risk hauling them. That is an extremely important factor in fighting engineer, and that's why stickies are so effective, because even if they don't kill the building, they force the engineer to relocate or risk being blown up, unless he's using the short circuit, which is a pile of shit, like unbalanced weapon, but that's again a topic for a different day. And the final one, and the least important one actually, is annoyance, which is mostly a psychological method of combat. and it's basically putting in the engineer in a position where he has to pick between healing off your stupid chip damage or chasing you, which can be attained through just dealing damage to the sentry gun. The point is, Pyro can do none of these effectively. He can't do long-range chip damage because his only real options are shotguns, which are explicitly close-range weapons, and at the range where you're going to be safe from a sentry gun, those will only deal maybe 9 damage if you're lucky per pellet. So the other option is flare guns, which deal like 30 damage to a sentry gun. I think the stock flare gun deals 30 damage, and then the other two deal less, which again can be healed off in a single wrench swing, and because of the rate of fire of the flare guns, they don't put out enough chip damage to even really be an annoyance to the engineer, and none of Pyro's weapons, save maybe the scorched shot, really force any kind of displacement with the engineer. The reason Splash works so well is because it doesn't just force him to move, it, forces him to move through knockback. I almost just called it the short circuit. The scorched shot has knockback, yeah, but the knockback is pretty minimal. It's more of a stun than actual knockback, and if the Engie's good, he'll have a dispenser nearby where he can heal off the afterburn. So you're not really being a threat in any case. Now, again, let's look at another class Engie is said to counter. Scout. Scout can deal amazing chip damage with the pistol from a long enough range that he is not really threatened by a sentry gun. A lot of people would point to the Dragon's Fury as being Pyro's kind of tank buster, sentry buster. But the thing is, with Scout's pistol, he's not, gimping himself in any certain area by equipping the pistol. The pistol's an all-around good option. The Dragon's Fury is a very specialized weapon, which I'm not sure I want to give up on the utility of the normal flamethrowers and all the other jobs that they allow me to do, just to be able to stand up to a sentry gun. That's not a good trade-off, you know what I mean? That's not something that I should have to do to be able to not be useless because a sentry gun exists. So, no, the simple answer isn't to just switch to the Dragon's Fury, because then, well, what about spy checking? What about reflex? What about extinguishing teammates? All these things that you can't do nearly as effectively just because you want to be able to not be, torn apart by sentry guns. And so, I think that maybe not giving Pyro a rapid-fire, long-distance weapon would be the ideal, but again, I honestly think that the best way that Pyro can be changed to stand up to sentry guns more effectively and have more participation in a push against a sentry gun is to make sentry guns turn slower while they're taking direct fire damage. There's a lot of people who would say that sentry guns already turn very slow, which I agree with, but maybe not slow enough to keep up with them as a Pyro with your DPS and with their DPS. And with their knockback, that also makes Ubercharge very, very hard to use as Pyro against a sentry gun. Especially if it's being wrangled, that Uber's going to run out way before you get any meaningful damage in, and you're going to be knocked across the map if you let your feet off the ground for even a second. And so Uber isn't really a good option either, except maybe the quick fix, but then if anyone else attacks you at the same time that you're taking fire from that sentry gun, it's not going to be enough to out-heal the DPS. Sentry guns have really, really good DPS, as they should. I'm not advocating for a nerf to sentry guns by any stretch of the imagination. I think that they're fine, they do what they need to do. But when it comes to Pyro specifically, I feel like some kind of accommodation should be made for the fact that Pyro just gets absolutely trashed by sentry guns. Also, this is me adding another message after. The Frontier Justice can one-tap a full health Pyro, and that's bullshit. If you've made it this far into the video, I'd like to give my sincerest thanks. It's over. I'm done. Again, thank you very much for hearing what I have to say, considering my opinion, and I'm eager to hear your feedback and response in the comments. I will try to do my best to respond to everything, which shouldn't be hard given how small my channel is, but yeah. Thank you for watching.